China and Iran just announced the official launch date for a railway that could reshape global trade. That headline didn't just make waves. It sent shockwaves through newsrooms and strategy circles around the world. But even more revealing was the online reaction. One viral comment summed it up. When will the United States wake up to its missteps? Because this isn't merely about tracks and shipping containers. It's about geopolitical power. It's about control over oil. And it's about how two nations, long sidelined by the West, are quietly redrawing the blueprint of global commerce. This new China-Iran railway isn't just another regional development, it's a clear strategic move. Imagine it as a backdoor quietly built beneath the watch of the world's traditional gatekeeper. For decades, the United States has held sway over global sea lanes and financial systems, shaping who gets to trade and on what terms. But China and Iran are now building a workaround, one that cuts out the oceans and rewrites the rules entirely. This is far more than logistics. For Iran, it's a return to relevance. For China, it's energy security, bypassing US-patrolled waters. And at the core of it all is the rise of China's Belt and Road Initiative, a long-term vision to connect the world through trade routes, pipelines, and railways that all lead back to Beijing. So what exactly is this railway? Why is it so significant? And why are nations like the US and India on edge? The origins of the China-Iran Railway. This railway may appear sudden, but it's the result of nearly 7 years of diplomatic back and forth, delays, and roadblocks. So, what finally changed? First, consider the larger picture. Iran has long been strangled by heavy US sanctions, making global trade difficult. At the same time, China has steadily advanced its Belt and Road Initiative, a grand plan to connect Asia, Europe, and Africa through land and sea routes. But linking directly to Iran was always politically delicate. Iran needed a stable, long-term partner. China needed to avoid drawing the ire of Washington. That all changed in 2021 with a 25-year strategic partnership between the two nations. The agreement opened the floodgates for cooperation in areas like energy infrastructure and technology. And one of the first big promises? This railway. Now, this isn't some short commuter line. This is a massive 1,350-kilometer track stretching from Iran's heartland to its eastern frontiers. It cuts across deserts and mountains, connecting key economic regions. But the real power lies in what it links Iran to. China's land routes and eventually Europe. That matters because it allows both countries to bypass US-controlled maritime choke points, like the Strait of Malacca. If conflict flares or sanctions tighten, the railway remains untouched. China, wary of sea-based vulnerabilities, sees land routes as a much more secure option. Ports can be blocked, ships can be stopped. But trains crossing allied countries? That's harder to disrupt. This railway, then, is not just a transportation project. It's a buffer against future political or military pressure. So, who's watching most closely, and who feels left behind? One major player is India. Back in 2016, New Delhi made a bold move. It signed a deal with Iran to develop the Chabahar Port and a proposed rail link into Afghanistan. It was meant to counter China's growing regional presence and create an Indian trade route into Central Asia. But those plans stalled. Sanctions made it difficult for Indian firms to send funds or equipment. Progress ground to a halt. And then came the shock. In 2020, Iran announced it would proceed with the railway, without India. Despite years of discussion, India was out. And guess who stepped in? China, with speed and capital. It was a diplomatic blow to India, and it wasn't the only one left out. The United States, once a dominant force in Middle Eastern trade and influence, now finds itself entirely sidelined. This new corridor, stretching from China through Iran into Central Asia, is developing without a single thread of U.S. involvement. And that's the larger shift. A new trade bloc is emerging. one that neither looks to the West for leadership nor depends on it for funding. These countries are building alternative systems, on land, beyond the reach of U.S. naval power. This is more than economics. It's about who commands the future of global influence, and China is pulling ahead. To really grasp the impact of this railway, we need to focus on one crucial location: Chabahar Port. Chances are you've never heard of it, but you will. Situated on Iran's southeastern coastline along the Gulf of Oman, Chabahar is Iran's only ocean-facing deepwater port. It provides direct access to the Indian Ocean, skipping the congested Strait of Hormuz. But what makes Chabahar brilliant is its potential reach. It's not just for Iran. It's quickly becoming Central Asia's gateway to the sea. Countries like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan, all landlocked, typically rely on outdated Soviet routes or Russian infrastructure. That means high costs and limited options. But with this new rail link to Chabahar, they gain a direct path to global markets. Now, freight can travel from deep within Central Asia through Iran to Chabahar, and then by sea to Africa, Europe, Southeast Asia, even Latin America. Let's look at some figures. Chabahar's railway can move over 8 to 12 million tons of cargo per year. The port is being upgraded to handle over 33 million tons annually. That's not regional, that's global scale. Even more importantly, it bypasses key rivals. China previously bet on Pakistan's Gwadar port. India hoped Chabahar would be its counterweight. But now China is in Chabahar too, thanks to its deepening ties with Iran. That reduces Russia's hold over Central Asia, as these countries no longer need to depend solely on Russian routes. So Chabahar becomes more than a port. It becomes a symbol of shifting allegiances and an emerging trade system powered by Chinese infrastructure. Zooming out, we see that this isn't just one railway. It's a cornerstone in a larger Eurasian transformation, where railways, oil, and currencies are being rerouted. Consider this. In 2020 alone, over 12,000 freight trains traveled between China and Europe. That's not experimental, it's functional. And now, the China-Iran Railway plugs directly into this Silk Road network. It links with routes through Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, and beyond. Chinese goods move west, Middle Eastern oil moves east, all via land. South Korea and Japan are already adapting, shifting electronics and industrial shipments to these railways, which are faster than ships and safer than sea routes. That changes everything. Land shipping is quicker, less exposed to piracy or naval interference, and avoids choke points like the Suez Canal or Strait of Malacca. And then there's oil. Iran has the world's fourth largest proven reserves. This railway allows China to move that oil by land to western China, then distribute it through its own pipeline network, cutting transport costs and minimizing U.S. naval influence. But perhaps the most strategic change is in currency. By settling trade deals in Chinese yuan instead of U.S. dollars, China is directly challenging the petrodollar system. That's something Washington has leaned on for decades to maintain global financial dominance. This railway isn't just steel and concrete, it's a symbol of realignment, of power shifting away from the West and toward a new axis, anchored by China across Eurasia. Each new track is also a tether, pulling nations deeper into China's sphere of influence. And for Iran, it's a chance to rise from isolation and become a central energy and trade hub, defying sanctions, breaking through pressure, and shaping its own destiny. Together, China and Iran are building what might become a new economic zone, spanning the Middle East and Central Asia, powered by trade, oil, and infrastructure with Beijing at the core. Meanwhile, the United States, once a central player in energy and logistics, sits on the sidelines, left out of this new reality. No influence in the routes, no say in the deals. Was it a strategic oversight, or is the shift now unstoppable? One thing is certain, China isn't just reacting to the future, it's actively constructing it, and more nations are jumping aboard. So here's the final question. With China laying tracks across continents, are we witnessing the dawn of a new global order? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more breakdowns like this, be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's next. The world is changing fast, and this is only the beginning.